Well, hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. It is great to have you join us. And with me today, I have Michelle Dupois, who's at Household, Leaders in Experience Design. And we're going to be talking about that, of course, and defining it and understanding it. And we have also with us Alana Feldman from Pypestream, Leaders in Conversational AI. My name is Paul Johns. I'm moderating today from Rule of 40 Consulting. So first of all, Michelle and Alana, thank you for joining us for what I think is going to be a really exciting webinar and a topic that I know is coming up more and more, which is this notion of the hybrid customer and how brands should really begin to understand them, cater for them, and serve them. And so why don't we start, first of all, if I may, Michelle, with you. Let's start with a couple of definitions so we kind of, get the topic kind of contextualized. When you talk about experience design, what does that mean and how are you helping your customers today?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's not to be confused with experiential. Experience design is a much bigger and holistic approach to brands, and it's really how we bring a brand uniquely to life in the environment, but also through online channels. And defining the experiences, services, product discovery, and I guess how we want guests to feel and interact is crucial. So this matters in retail, in hospitality, in F&B, pretty much anywhere where people or customers need to engage. So it really covers everything from designing and curating experiences that we want people to actually talk about and share. It's how they'll be motivated to participate, enjoy interactive inspiration and guidance, as well as get help with their lifestyle wants and choices more easily. I guess it's where the brand, story, products, services, and that emotional connection with the customer comes together in one place.
I love that. That's a great way to close that out. I really love that. And so on the other side of this world, then we have conversational AI. So Alana, over to you. Give us maybe, your part of the answer here as it relates to defining conversational AI for everyone today.
Sure, thank you. I think, Michelle, there's a lot of synergies there. So conversational AI is one part of that really large field of AI, artificial intelligence, that has become a huge part of our everyday. The most common version of conversational AI is what people think of as a chatbot. It's just a human talking back and forth with a computer and that understanding. Conversational AI as a field has really developed, and that's what Pypestream has been working on, developing it into expanding transactional capabilities, but everything is around that support of automation with a human. And there's so many different applications, and that's why we're really excited to talk about it with experience design, because as Michelle said, it's both physical and digital, and we think that there's a really great place here for the digital applications.
When we came up with this idea of the webinar, I was so happy to see that you guys had partnered, because I've kind of felt now that these two worlds, as important as they are, they haven't necessarily been joined up in their thinking, their tone of voice, the behavior, the analytics, and all of that understanding. So seeing you guys partner feels to me like it's kind of leading, I think, where the market's going to, which is that customer has to have that kind of joined up journey.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the hybrid customer. Michelle, I'm going to come to you first. Who is this person and what are the key characteristics of the hybrid customer?
Well, I guess I'd start by saying the hybrid customer is really all of us. Okay, so I think we've learned to do more with our mobiles, whether we're downloading a ticket, going to a concert, and then entering a physical environment and using that digital asset to get through a physical barrier, or whether we're simply searching before we go into a store, or whether we're buying ahead, picking up in a store location, or ordering food or shopping on demand. We're doing all these things all the time. And I guess that these are all the kinds of activations that we now take for granted. We kind of expect to do this. So I guess the key trait of the hybrid customer is that they want to switch between physical and digital. They want to switch between physical and digital worlds that are actually related to each other. So in the moment, they have this kind of everything, everywhere approach. And we have to remember that this is the new expectation, to be able to switch between worlds instantly. We all need and want to do it. And I think probably even beyond this, they're looking for personalization, more personalization. They want things that reflect their own preferences, that are relevant to them. And one thing that we're seeing is getting help is one of the biggest, fastest needs that they're looking for. And just to quote a recent study from Accenture, this is kind of a global phenomenon, because this is a piece of research that goes into 12 countries, and over 75% in every country say the same thing. They're saying that they are overwhelmed with all the choices that they have available, and over 55% are saying that they are open to AI to help them make decisions. So when we're thinking about the hybrid customer, we need to sort of factor all of this into our, I guess, what we would term broader customer journey planning, to help inspire and help with these new kinds of interactions.
And I like the way you started by saying, we are the hybrid customer, because that immediately made me think about how I feel when I engage with brands. And I know, Michelle, I've talked to you about this before. I've often felt that when I physically am in a space, I've become somewhat anonymous or forgotten or unknown, precisely at the point where that brand has the best opportunity to really engage with me. So this idea of bringing these worlds together and helping to navigate all of that choice, because it is overwhelming. I feel like it's gotten more overwhelming. So if there is a way now that we can bring these things together to help that hybrid customer, I think this is where brands have an incredible opportunity. So Alana, with that in mind, can we get your kind of portion of the answer here? How is conversational AI, leaning into what Michelle said, really helping to kind of, understand this hybrid customer?
Definitely. So I think one of the key aspects, on top of everything Michelle said about this hybrid customer, is that they're also a more educated customer, because they are doing their research before walking into that store. So they have that understanding of what the brand is, or what they might come to expect inside of that store, from all of their digital engagement beforehand. So I think that what conversational AI can really help with is around that recommendation, and helping with the choice of what are they looking for, what are things related to it, and understanding that personalization of, these are things that they might need now, these are things they might need in 6 months, and understanding that we can really be there to assist them throughout their journey and throughout their customer life cycle, in kind of the way that we think about it as the continuous customer. They're not this one touch point anymore. It's a constant life cycle of this consumer journey.
One of the things that I think, reflecting on some of the calls we've had ahead of this, is this idea that, customers, their expectations have shifted, Michelle, as you've said. They're more demanding. And for us, with all the choice they have, it's not just an abundance of choice for me as a brand, but the fact is they can go anywhere. So we're really fighting for that attention. And so how do we create those engagements that help to start to kind of shape, customer loyalty, and I would say, increase value of that customer. So let's dig into that. And so, Alana, if I can, I'm going to come to you first. Can you give us an overview? And I'd like to get as practical with some examples if we can. Can you give us an overview of how conversational AI is beginning to transform customer engagement? And you can, given that we've had some time ahead of this, feel free to lean into each other. But Alana, I really want the lens of conversational AI principally.
Definitely. So I think that one of the most practical examples is that conversational AI really enables self-service, and it can enable self-service on your mobile, whether you're at home, whether you're in a store, because people don't want to walk to a checkout counter and wait online. They want to check out wherever they are. They need help wherever they are. If they are ordering food from a restaurant and something went wrong, they're not going back to the store. They want it on their mobile. They want it as accessible as possible. So that is really one of the places where conversational AI is able to say, okay, tell us how we can help you, and we can help you right here, right now, to do whatever you need, without having to really put the burden on the user in any way.
And no, I love that. And Michelle, when we started talking, I was really impressed with how, first of all, the kinds of customers that Household has today, but the fact that you've really leaned into this very early on in the industry and built this partnership, I think is great. And I'm kind of really curious about what you're starting to see about that customer engagement as it relates to bring these worlds together, that physical, that virtual, and that in that more connected way.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, just sort of building on everything Alana said, there is this sort of need for individualized service. And what we see when we're looking at customer segments and increasingly diverse and different types of customers, The more the more diverse they are, the more diverse their needs are, the more their wallets vary. We can definitely see a role where conversational AI technology can help personalize that experience and actually begin to support those different aspects of what they need. And for us, as I said before, it's certainly one of the key elements to thinking about journey experiences as the new personalized servicescapes and what we can do to kind of optimize each of those touch points. I think, as you say, it's really nascent, but the potential for that human feel interaction that guides, suggests, helps, and from the sort of the very functional things that people need to ideas and inspiration to navigation, having this additional service layer, we fundamentally think will truly revolutionize the kind of experience that customers can have with brands. And we're thinking about it, I guess we're thinking about it as a form of a hosted experience. There are lots of exciting outcomes to this as well, such as from an experience perspective, more physical space for inspiration, for hospitality, even perhaps for changeable experiences. Thinking about the ways that you can encourage customers to spend more time, more dwell time, enjoyment, connection to the brands in different ways. So it really is a kind of sweet spot, this conversational AI coming together with experience design is really a new sweet spot that can bridge that gap between physical experience, digital, and people-led services.
And you lead. Sorry, no, go ahead, Alana.
No. So I think that's a really interesting point because I think the dwell time, it shows that the brand doesn't necessarily just think of you as a consumer or you are someone who's going to purchase a specific thing from my brand. We think of you as a person and we think that these are things that you might need along your journey, whether it's this is the closest door to the section of the thing that you're looking for, and this is the parking, and this is a food that you might want to pick up if you're in a mall. So kind of planning your whole experience around that I think is a really powerful thing for brands to offer to their consumers, that outside of selling a product, it really does create that loyalty.
I think what's going to be really interesting as well, guys, is it just struck me that there was a time when you were known. If you went to your local butchers or your local, they just knew you. They knew what you read. I mean, there are places where your buying habits are known because I go there all the time. As we kind of think about big scale, recreating or building the optic that, again, I'm known, I'm understood, I'm cared for, and I'm catered for, becomes a really critical challenge. And what strikes me is if one brand gets it right and you start to feel that, exactly as you just said, Alana, I don't feel like you're trying to rush me out the store. Suddenly, the brands that aren't doing it really have this kind of contrast that suddenly comes up. Because once it's done right somewhere, those customers now know what's possible and they start to kind of gravitate towards that. And that leads to this question, which is, for all of the emotion, there is a huge opportunity and a massive business impact. So why don't we talk about that? Michelle, I'm going to come to you first. So with business impact in mind, how have hybrid customers changed the way that brands approach engagement? And maybe give us some examples of where you've seen it done right, maybe an example of where it hasn't been done right. But again, I'd love to get into some examples.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Alana talked about education and mentioned that need. I think, when you're dealing with somebody who expects more from a brand in lots of different ways, there's definitely a need from an experience perspective to help them understand the different ways that they can engage, what they might want to use for when, and make that as intuitive as possible when they are in any environment, so that they are kind of optimizing all the tools that they have, in hand in a way. I think what we have tended to see is very linear approaches to certainly experience design, of which digital comes to life at certain touch points, which is, it's still the norm actually, and it will be for a long time. We see different destination points for different types of services. And again, we're not saying chuck all this stuff away, because people need to learn how to do stuff and they need to know where to go. And often when they're shopping in the same place, or visiting the same place that they know well. They expect to find things in the same places. So it's really about thinking how to be less linear and be more adaptive to any kind of situation. And I guess one of the analogies that we were thinking about is, we're constantly talking about the 3-screen generation. Sitting in front of the TV, you've got your laptop, you're on your mobile. It's amazing what we're all capable of. But this is really kind of what we're talking about in this kind of commercial environment. So this kind of future of customer journey experiences, I guess, across retail, hospitality, and entertainment is certainly one that can be made up of different optimization layers that customers can tap into as they choose to. And it's difficult to cite examples. We can cite a lot of examples as to who's tapping into which part really, really well. But I think this is a sort of a new strand that becomes almost synonymous with an experience that we're kind of talking about here.
And I think, staying on this idea of these personalized journeys and having that intimacy with customers, one of the challenges with conversational AI when it's done badly, when it's just technology that isn't supported by some of the work that you do, Alana, is, I think we said yesterday, the only thing worse than not knowing me is misunderstanding me or
Right. The only thing worse than no experience is a bad experience.
Right, exactly. Like neutral for some is okay, but we can do much better. We need to do much better. So let's talk about what good conversational AI. I know you have a bunch of customers in various industries, but maybe you can give me some examples of the business impact it's having when it's done properly and it's kind of having the right kind of adoption for your brand's customers.
Definitely. So I think that in terms of business impact, this goes back to the what Michelle said about being non-linear, because you sometimes think about, I want to engage this consumer as a pre-sales, they haven't bought anything, or a post-sales. But I think that what this really does is allows you to open that up and say, this is someone who is shopping for one thing, but maybe we can also talk about something else. Or maybe they're shopping or they're looking for services on something that they've already bought, but this is an upsell opportunity. This is an opportunity for us to say, here's something similar. And I know that we've talked about this, but in like as a pregnant person, I'm constantly getting bombarded with information about, here's things you'll need now, but here's things you'll need in 3 months, here's things you'll need in 6 months. And that makes me feel like guided and really, really helped through this process of unknowns. And because these brands know what people like me have done, it gives me a lot of confidence in trusting their judgment and their recommendation.
Yeah.
When
I
we
mean,
talked about,
Paul,
yeah,
I'll jump in there as well. I think I just want to sort of, reiterate what Alana is saying here, because I think, where we see, certainly from an experience perspective, in the sort of perhaps a spatial design, we're seeing conversational AI used for ease of navigation, checking stuff. There's quite a lot of functional elements to it, or specific interactions. I mean, we love Sephora Visual Artists, where you actually you star in the tutorial and you can actually relate to the person because it's you, as opposed to someone who doesn't look like you, showing you how to apply makeup. So all of those things are brilliant, and they're quite specific things. They're kind of almost like defined experience moments. And I think, what we're talking about, certainly what Alana is talking about, is this bringing together of personalized inspiration with preference, with convenience, to accompany different types of shopping experiences, including physical, and probably, the great opportunities within the physical. And then starting and having that conversation means that can be extended beyond store or venue.
And this comes back to this idea of the continuous consumer that you guys talked about. It's funny, I have an 11-year-old, I'm at the other end, Alana, I have an 11-year-old daughter who's already a Sephora girl, and she is the 3-screen generation. And I'm kind of also struck by how these brands are appropriately engaging with different age groups. Because to your point, Alana, this is where it gets interesting, with life events, if brands get this kind of thing wrong, they can feel intrusive. And so, brands have to have as high an EQ as they do an IQ as they build these types of relationships. So which means you have to have the right data, you have to have everything integrated, because, this philosophically is phenomenal. but it has to be underpinned with the right technology, integrated in the right way with the right data about our customers, so we can again adapt to the way that we work with each one in the best possible way. So Ilana, I'm going to stick with you if I may right now, but can you give me examples of how brands are integrating conversational AI into their engagement strategies? Just a couple of real world examples. You don't need to name companies, but just particular events.
Sure. I think a great example is things like subscription management. So helping you with making sure that you're getting the right thing, if it's on whatever cadence it is, 3 months, 6 months, making sure that that works for you, making sure you understand how you can use it, and then also offering you those other options of this is a really good complementary product. But also things going into the world of generative AI, which is something that is very, very hot right now inside of the world of conversational AI. Brands are really leaning into the idea of personalized recommendations based on generative AI. So if you have a specific criteria of things you're looking for, whether that's you're trying to buy a car, you're trying to buy an apartment, you're trying to decide where to go on vacation, if you can give a couple pieces of information, the conversational AI is able to then say, here's things that we can help you with, and here's things that we think you would like. And next step is, and do you want to buy it right now? So it really is a very seamless transition from you telling the brand, these are things that I want, the brand telling you, these are the things that would serve you well.
And Michelle, this is a great segue. I'm kind of curious because I know you guys have a really strong methodology in how you work with your global customers. But as you think about some of this new capability, how has this altered the way the physical space, that experience design is constructed now that we can begin to vector in all of these different data points even before they've walked into a physical space?
As I say, it's very nascent. I mean, certainly, with all kind of good customer experience design, we're thinking about a number of different layers, as I was saying to this, and how they work together, how they're optimized, and what kind of touch point serves the right job for the customer or customer type. And so certainly when we're thinking about customer journey to design experiences that are omni-channel, I would say that we're considering a number of physical factors to how we sort of create and invite customers into what they see, how they navigate, how they interact with digital, and obviously how they can use different service call to actions to help enrich or enhance what they're doing. And these are all things that are certainly to come in this world.
And I think, sorry, can you go back one second?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I think that part of what we see here really is that we're able to, we think of it as like moving beyond the shelf. So if a brand has a specific amount of space in a box store, they put a QR code and that space becomes infinite because they're able to then create the experience that they want, jumping off from that physical space but into that digital experience. And I think that that's a really powerful place to do that.
These are the examples I love, Ilana, because I think it really helps make it real for people that are joining us. So I want to talk a little bit about the expectation. How has that shifted in recent years? Because, I think we've talked a bit, and I hear what you're saying about it being nascent, but it feels to me like we're in this truncated world of where we weren't doing all this. So suddenly those demands are higher, that expectation's higher. What is the hybrid customer really expecting today, and how do you see those expectations shifted? I'll come to you first, Michelle, if I may.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think you talked about it before. This expectation to be known by brands that you shop with. So you're known online. Suddenly you're in the store, and the whole thing starts from scratch again, unless it's a very, very personalized experience that you have with that particular location or brand. When we think about the hybrid customer and actually being able to kind of continue that relationship, it could be a conversation, it could be a new conversation, a new need. Certainly when we're thinking about conversational AI in this context, it can aid that ongoing recognition and engagement in real time. And I think this is particularly important when a customer is shopping frequently, repeat buying. I think one of the best and most interesting innovations, it seems so obvious, launched by grocery brands a while back, was actually to give money off on items that you actually buy more often. and actually lean into value with loyal customers this way, whilst finding other ways to open up exploration and shop more of the experience. And so this kind of dialogue and engagement, is key. And we talked about this continuity, this continuousness, and actually we're thinking about this new experience certainly as how we service the continuous customer journey. So thinking about how the relationship doesn't break off. And this is where we see the opportunity for building loyalty, for growing lifetime value, and actually, just really kind of leaning into all of the things that that your customer needs and wants.
I love this concept of the continuous customer, continuous consumer, but it also blends well, Alana, with what you said earlier, which is that it doesn't feel like I'm just having a transaction with you at a moment in time. It's a more intimate, more sustained, more persistent dynamic. What are you seeing from a conversational AI point of view, Alana, in terms of the shifting customer expectation? And what do you think it's going to continue to do over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest shift is that the hybrid customer expects the brand to know everything about them, as you said, but also be able to deliver anything. So it's not, if you're flying on an airline, the expectation is that the airline can also help you with your hotel and your whatever you're doing once you get there. So it's really this, it's not seeing the customer as a customer of this one brand. It's seeing the customer as a whole person and understanding what they want to do. And that is the expectation that I think has shifted from being on the consumer to being on the brand. And I think that that is huge because that involves brands getting a lot more, a lot wider of a net of information and partnerships. And that's really where we come in a lot of cases, and we can help connect systems. We can help connect brands to other pieces of information that they don't necessarily have themselves.
You set us up perfectly for this question, Alana. It might be because we rehearsed this. I don't know, but it feels like it was, but you did a great job. But, it's funny you mentioned airlines, and this is such a random thing to say, but I know whenever I get onto my seat, like, you know who I am. Why is the screen in front of me so generic? Why can't you know my favorite movies? Like, why can't you do a better job of getting that data about me? There's so many missed opportunities. But what struck me is the first airline that gets it right, suddenly every airline got it wrong. Do you know what I mean? It's like my expectation shifts every time there's an improvement, and it is all about the data. So let's go with that first, Alana. So how important is data in rendering this image of the customer so that we can have the right engagement, handled and managed and supported in the right way?
I mean, data is everything. Data, getting the data right, it leads to those types of personalized, proactive, really, really experiential interactions. And having no data is you're an anonymous person sitting in an airline seat. And I think that that's really the big difference of does the brand want to treat the consumer as a patron and a repeat user, or are they just a person sitting in a seat? And one of the biggest things that we've seen throughout this is that the data exists. It's really just about how you use it. And that's been one of the really interesting parts of kind of this generative shift, is understanding what can we do with all of the data that we have, and how can we use that to create these really nice experiences.
How create and Lana, when you're engaging with your customers, I'm curious about the conversations. Who's leading? Your customers like being more creative? Are they realizing what more can now be done? Is it a question that we always had the data, we didn't know how to use it, or we have so many things we want to do, we just don't have the data? What are you seeing in terms of the maturation of those two elements?
It's a lot of both. A lot of times customers will come to us and say, here, we have this black box of data. We've been collecting data for 10 years. We knew that at some point we were going to be able to use it, but we don't know how, or we tried. And so what can we do with it? Or we can come and say, hey, actually collecting data would be a really great idea because here's all of the things that we could do with it. So I think it really depends on where the brand has been. But I think we're seeing a lot of both, honestly. But it's a really exciting time to be able to then say, okay, and here's all of the things that we can do with this data.
I love that. Michelle, what are you seeing from households perspective as it relates to, finding the right data, using it? Where are you getting it from? And maybe some examples of how you've helped customers leverage that data.
Yeah, I think certainly, as you say, there's all types of data. There's sort of this rich data. There's certainly the kind of data that really matters to us, which is knowing more about what the customer is actually saying and doing. Sometimes two different things. But there's, certainly for brands, creating communities and creating real communities authentically, which means a sort of engaged cohort of people who are doing stuff, participating, talking to each other. And often, the sort of, I guess, the most active of these groups, we call them fans. They're very valuable to brands. And they're certainly, the biggest part of the value, certainly from a numbers perspective as well. But I think, making that link between community and data is a really important aspect. So whether that's localized data, social data, personal data around habits and what people are doing in particular areas and locations, all of this combines to create a very hyper relevant solution. And I think those are the things that we're looking for. Certainly how we can, localize experiences, from location to location that combines, with digital. And this certainly matters for retail. It matters for hotels. It matters to know who those different people are who are coming in and around the vicinity and how they use those experiences and what they want to truly tap in and grow those communities. I use an example. We've been working with a hotel group in Santa Monica, and certainly what we learned with them is that a large part of the people, the segments who come and use the hotel on a regular basis, actually live in the area, so they're using the gym, barbers. There's a bunch of things there that are wonderful services and experiences for guests, but they're also heavily utilised by the community. And so understanding kind of times of the day, how you engage, all the different things that business can do to kind of optimize, engagement and obviously, revenue opportunities is super key.
As you guys are talking, I'm realizing, and Michelle, when you started by saying we're all hybrid customers, it completely changed the way I thought about asking questions, because it's so often we have these discussions. We're like, who is that person? It's like, well, it's us. And I'm thinking about some of my anxiety with certain brands that they're going to know more about me. They're going to understand me. And it's the word that I come back to is trust. Like, we're really trusting that this brand is going to not just know more, because we're letting them a little closer into our lives. We're letting them a little deeper into our families and our friends and our preferences and our habits and our hobbies. And that requires trust. But so I kind of want to get into, because I can imagine brands could really get this wrong if they don't have the right tactics and techniques. And so but the best way to get it right is to work with folks like you guys, and also to learn from other people's mistakes. But what are some of the really effective personalization tactics that you've seen implemented for the hybrid customers? Alana, if I can, I'd love to come to you first. And if you want to share a couple that you've seen or been suggested that you're like, I don't think that might be a step too far, I'm really curious about what the parameters might look like as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, kind of on the positive, some of the things that we do around personalization that have been really effective are things like, if you recently ordered from a specific restaurant, we're going to surface that to you immediately when you first open your conversation, because that's most likely why you are coming to talk to us. And if you haven't ordered from a restaurant, we have lots of other options of things that you can do. But in terms of kind of statistically, 80% of people are going to be coming in to talk about their most recent order. So that's just a really easy thing that we can do in terms of personalization. Another thing in the streaming world that we do is, if you are coming to help get support with a streaming system, we will do first a check to see, have you had any recent errors or recent issues in your streaming, and surface that as we see that you were watching NFL on Sunday and it kept going black. Is that why you're here? Because again, most likely anything that we can know about reasons why you might be coming in to talk to us before you even say anything really just, they make that conversation faster, they make it more efficient. And that is something that we've seen directly drives customer satisfaction with the brand. In terms of things that we've seen that have gone poorly, I think a lot of this has to do with assumptions. And anytime the brand's going to make an assumption that they know you or that they know things that you might want, but that's not true, or it's based on kind of a miscategorization of you, that's where you start to feel a little bit turned off. And that's where you start to say, why would I ever watch 90 Day Fiance? I'm here for Game of Thrones. Things like that kind of lead to a questionable loyalty, I'll say, with brands.
That's such a great example, because you could see how that, like, not knowing is one thing, but thinking you know but getting it wrong is like you've gone to all this effort to give me the wrong choice. It feels almost insulting. It's such a delicate balance to get right. It really is. Michelle, from your point of view, what are some of the tactics that you've seen? And again, I'm really I'm a big fan of, particularly when I have an audience here like this, is what are good examples, and maybe just, Emily, if you want, just a couple of things to just kind of watch out for as you embark on this journey of serving the hybrid customer.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things that have just come up certainly around trust, and also being misprofiled. What a nightmare. But there's I wanted to share an example that was our exec creative director, Sulan Choi. She named checked her local bakery for a piece on personalized experiences for the drum. And it was her local bakery. And the story was, the local baker, they Instagram you, they share when the fresh bread is ready in the oven, they tell you when it is on the post, they'll accept DMs, to put a loaf aside, to put anything else aside that you might want to pick up later. I mean, it's using tech, but it's very old fashioned, but it feels personal, and it has benefits. And if we're trying to identify how personalization, or what personalization is, this is how it should feel. When we look at examples like the M&S in the UK have a list finder function, so you can navigate quickly to everything on your list. Super helpful, very functional, and very sort of kind of delivering against a purpose. And again, no room for discovery or suggestions. When we think about sort of personalization, you always think, okay, well, Amazon's star ratings and reviews have been an amazing way to kind of turn actual product listings into something with personality, with stories, with people really talking about actually their experience of products. And that peer-to-peer element is really, really important as we start to sort of think about communities around what personalization means. We hear a lot and talk a lot about user-generated content. What part will that play? So I think in terms of talking about personalization tactics, that there's really exciting ways to explore it, but also never lose sight of what personalization is and what it could be, and how we want people to feel, in that sort of moment of personalization.
I love the fact that you said it was kind of old fashioned. There is something very nostalgic, particularly when you talk about baked bread, something very nostalgic with the idea, can you put a loaf aside for me? It is harking back to this time when there were real connections that were very human, and we kind of lost a lot of that as society kind of broke apart and scaled, and there was just too much choice, and you're kind of recreating these very personal connections which went, but we still have them in us, that we still want them. We even if we never grew up with it because we're that generation, we'd still want it, we need it, we want you to know us, we want you to treat us a certain way. But it is an important one to get right. And as you rightly pointed out, both of you, when you do misunderstand them, or have the, what do you call, mislabel them, it's the worst. So that's the perfect way to get into the challenges, and we don't need to talk about that one, but let's talk about some others. But Alana, I'm going to come back to you first, if I may, for this one. What do you see the biggest challenges that brands face when trying to engage with hybrid customers? You've given a couple of examples, but let's expand on that.
I think all of it really can be summed up by the idea of just keeping up, because customer expectation is evolving, as we talked about. And customer, like what they want to do is always going to be right because they're the customer. So making sure that the brand has the ability to service them in the way that they want to be serviced, I think is the biggest challenge. So I think keeping up technologically, keeping up just in terms of understanding even what is a proper categorization of a user, and what are all of the connections that they might want to make, or what are the suggestions that they should be offered. I think that's the brand's biggest challenge right now.
Keeping up. I love that. Michelle, from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, the challenges that we see around certainly around how we get people to actually interact, to activate, to adopt new services. It's got to be compelling. They've got to be able to understand it, so therefore it needs to be part of a brand experience and how we articulate that. It has to grab attention for all the right reasons. And also, I think bringing alive the personality of the services is really, really key. Keep fun ways to engage, keeping customers motivated, different ways to keep them considering different things, whether it's value or benefits or convenience, and so on. And I think that sort of links to another challenge, which is about always keeping um, you know, tech-based services and certainly AI very humanized. It needs to be human, and it needs to be part of a brand's language, identity, its service offering. It's not separate too. So it really needs to be co-created in many ways. And this is the exciting part of bringing these two elements together, that the possibility is there to do that. And we talked about trust just before, and building trust in different ways. And this dimension is certainly a key aspect to building trust with customers, making it feel unified. They're having a unified experience, of the brand. Certainly, the data piece is interesting because the willingness to trade obviously grows higher when there are benefits and rewards to be had. But obviously, barrier is around privacy and concerns around that. So sort of overcoming that is pretty key. And so, I think this kind of the mapping together of these two elements is certainly a way to overcome lots of these particular challenges.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I'd like to get one trend that we think is going to really, begin to take hold of. I mean, 5 years feels like an eternity, but we were kind of in collective hibernation. A lot of brands use that time to go through digital transformation, but we're all back. And this is such an exciting time. When we talked yesterday, Michelle, you talked a lot about how exciting this was and what the opportunity was for brands. So, but you got to jump in now because this is happening around us. But let's talk about one trend each. I'll start with you, Alana. What's one trend you think will emerge in the next 5 years?
I've talked about it before and it's already emerging, but generative AI. And I think that going back to the challenge, but also opportunity is generative AI, because getting it right has so many benefits and so much upside to brands, but getting it wrong can be really dangerous and it can be costly. And that's something that we've already started to see. So I think over the next 5 years, I'm really excited to see how that emerges and how brands start to either adopt or reject. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion around the legal and security, and all of this data is going to become a very, very big topic. But I think that, to me, that's the one biggest trend to watch in the next 5 years.
We're seeing it all around us for sure, and the horror stories are coming out. So getting it right is critical. And one trend from you, Michelle, as we come to a close here.
Okay, so I guess the excitement around what we're talking about leans into this idea of active environments, environments that can do more. And, with voice and language, very soon, coming into play, what does this mean for servicescapes, of retail and hospitality? I mean, we're sort of kind of playing around with this idea, laughing about the idea of talking shops. And, what does this mean, actually? I'm going to sneak another one in here, actually. And secondly, aligned with this kind of active environment community, some of the threads that we were talking about before, peer-to-peer collaboration and engagement, and ensuring that sort of this kind of this, if you like, fan participation and engagement that sort of actually activates greater audiences, the role that they can play, and how that's going to, sort of help change the way that we engage is a sort of a fundamental part of this story, and one that we're super excited about.
I love it. We're exactly at 45 minutes. Michelle and Alana, I want to thank you both. Really exciting topic, one that we are starting to see more and more. So for brands right now who are out there thinking about, this is the hybrid customer, we need to know them, understand them, have the right data, have the right EQ, engage correctly. The details for Michelle at Household and Alana at Pypestream are all here for you to see. And we would love to hear from you, and we would love to help you as you embark on this journey. So Alana and Michelle, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Perfect. All right.